I'm a pretty resourceful person, but you've got these single mothers. We've got a single mother right now, and it's freezing there, and she's begging for somebody to come winterize her camper. So, we are not stabilized
Band-Aids on bullet
remotely
holes.
in this area.
Just putting Band-Aids on bullet holes.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio,
Tumwa, Iowa.
Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Jason Peters reporting live for Status Coup. Today we are in Candler, North Carolina, and I'm sitting with Dan and Courtney Krause of Hell or High Water NC. They've been doing work, volunteer work, and nonprofit work to help build back Western North Carolina following Hurricane Helene.
Here in the mountains, it's weird because the weather can be different 100 yards down the road than it is here. And in the valley here where we're at, we're kind of surrounded by mountains. So I don't know how our weathermen get paid because they're wrong more than 50% of the time anyway. But so the day of the storm, everybody we're kind of a little bit, I'm kind of a little bit of a prepper anyway. So, we had plenty of gasoline, propane, and all that stuff, as prepared as we could be. But we came out the day of the storm and the sun was shining and the birds were chirping. And we just thought that the weathermen were wrong again. They'd missed it because, everything seemed to be in pretty good shape. So, we kind of hung out for a little while, and then we're like, well, let's venture out and go see what's going on. So we didn't make it to the end of our driveway before we started seeing the trees laying on power lines. Just, every 30 feet, there's another tree on it.
So things were just fine here?
At this place, we lost power. So okay. I opened the door at 9 o'clock or something on Friday morning, and our barn manager had actually come up. So like I said, the sun was shining and the birds were singing, and I was like, man, this just doesn't look that bad. And at that exact moment, we heard a tree fall. And where our cars were over there. So, went over and looked, and the tree had fallen, missed all our cars, but fell right square on our well. So took out our water first thing. But, well, what can you do? So like I said, we loaded up and went down the road, and it was just kind of like apocalyptic. There's just people in their pajamas walking down the road staring at cell phones, because there's no service, and, nothing's open, and there's no power, and there's no anything, and everybody's just kind of like a zombie movie. And we drove a little further down to Westgate where the bridge goes over the River Arts District, and that's when we saw the river had just come out everywhere in both directions, and buildings underwater, and my heart and my stomach just sank. And it's just at that point I realized how bad it was. So we turned around and came home and kind of regrouped and decided that we were going to go out and try to do some help the next day, and we did, but with no communication and no organization. We literally spent the whole day looking for somewhere to help and just kind of spinning our wheels. So that's, as I was talking earlier, we found out that the radio station was giving out information. So we called and said, hey, we've got a truckload of supplies. We got willing, able-bodied people here that can help. Where would we be in most use? And immediately he said Garin Creek. Garin Creek and Fairview. We're getting multiple calls out of there an hour. They need help. So the day was over, so we went home and kind of just got rested up. And the next morning, I called again and said, it's kind of the same thing, and got the same response: go to Garin Creek, they need help. So that's when we headed out, went down in there, met a lot of resistance trying to get down there and help, but that's kind of how things started.
So you talk about resistance. That's not something uncommon that I've heard interviewing people out here. What was the resistance? What were you prevented from doing?
So we had a truck full of chainsaws and supplies because a lot of what had happened with trees falling and then getting mixed in with the water and then getting wedged up against other trees. There were just debris piles that were, as big as houses, that you're having to go through. And of course, people trapped, of course, looking for people's, that were missing, that had got swept away. At the very early stages, it was still a rescue at that point. So we were still trying to help people that were stranded or that were stuck on top of a house with water all around them. Any number of things. But law enforcement, actually out of town law enforcement, had barricades up that would not let people down to help. So I'm sure because they felt like they knew better, but it was pretty obvious that they needed help.
I'm sure part of it is protocol as well. It's kind of that walking that line between keeping existing survivors safe and, and helping people that really do need the help. I understand some of it, some of the reason behind it, but there were just other times it was just literally like, you know, just blocking roads when there are entire neighborhoods of people. They're not even called neighborhoods in Fairview. It's people on the mountain, blocking any access to that. Okay, what about those people? You know, I understand that you guys are looking for survivors, you're looking for bodies and stuff, but what about the people that are left that literally cannot get any resources? They can't get out. They'd have no vehicles. All the vehicles came down off that mountain, went in the water. A lot of them, some of the houses, you know, we can give you pictures of those early days of the houses. Unbelievable, like absolutely unbelievable. And, you know, so I understand some of the why behind it, but, you know, and so we actually were allowed to go behind a barricade and turn around and come back out before we found our way into another area, and we set up a resource station up there. But when we were turning around, we saw them bringing bodies out, and it was horrific. And so I understand the reason why the roadblocks were there for a lot of places, but some of them it was just literally cutting off resources for people that needed it desperately.
So you mentioned body bags, and that's one of the harder questions and conversations to talk about because obviously it's so sensitive. But one thing I've learned in speaking to people that have been on the ground is that they've witnessed a lot of death and a lot of horror, but the numbers don't seem to add up to the North Carolina death total for Hurricane Helene is 105
Yep.
right now.
Which is absurd.
And we've spoken to a lot of people who themselves know 10, 20, and anecdotally don't believe that number.
Not in the least. We don't understand why. I had heard something, and I've not verified it, but I had heard something that they're not allowed to actually count a death unless they have, this is so hard to talk about, unless they have a full body. That they can't say this person died. I get that, but the force of the water and the debris that hit a human being, you're not going to find a whole lot of intact people. So, you know, that's another problem that people are running into in this area. They've lost people. They've lost family members. There are their wives that have lost their husbands. There are children that have lost their fathers. But without having a death certificate for these people, they can't get any of their benefits for 3 years. So not only do you have an area that has a complete lack of governmental resources, we have no temporary housing, we have gotten very, very little funding. The $750 was a smack in the face and an absolute joke and an insult to people who are going through what they're going through here. Then you have families that would rely on these benefits that are coming from, you know, their fathers or their husbands. They can't get it for 3 years because of this nonsensical death toll that they're telling us, which I 100% believe is at least 1,000, if not more. 100%. We have friends with the Cajun Navy. We have friends that do search and rescue. We've got, you know, Navy SEAL friends that use the cadaver dogs. They have seen well over that count just in the areas that they're working.
And it just doesn't really make any sense why it's been such a secret. You know, it's just all of this seems to have been politicized from the beginning,
so
and it just doesn't make any sense. Nobody will, you know. I heard something fairly far into the after Helene of, you know, the death count in North Carolina for Helene is over 100. No shit. I mean, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Of course it's over 100.
There were 11 family members. You've heard of the Craigs. If you were in Fairview, have you heard of the Craig family?
I've not heard of it.
Okay, that's a story you guys need to look into because it's literally an entire family.
11 people.
11 of them died that night in one area called Craigtown in Fairview.
Oh, that might have been what George was talking about.
Yeah.
We just spoke to George up on Garin Creek, it's called,
Yes.
and he had said over the mountain in Craigsville,
Craigtown. Yes.
he had mentioned 11 deaths.
Yes.
He didn't say specifically.
That was one family.
That was one family that lost 11 people, including children. It was, the story is horrible.
So according to the state of North Carolina, that family is 1/10 of the
Exactly.
total death.
That one
Yeah.
family, and Craigtown is tiny. We had not made it. We had not been allowed to go through the roadblocks out toward that way until a few weeks in. And I didn't really understand why. I'm like, what's going on out here that's not going on? Because they kind of cleared the roadblocks. You know, we're allowed to go wherever we want to go now. But when we pulled up, the state trooper tried to stop us, and another man said, they're hell or high water, let them through. They're doing a lot of work. So they let us go through. And I, even after everything that we've seen, because the destruction is different in every area. You go to Black Mountain, it's completely different than what you see in Fairview. You go to Chimney Rock, it's very different than what you're going to see in Swannanoa or Bat Cave.
Just different kinds of devastation.
Just different. But when we went out toward Craigtown, I wasn't ready. It is like a dystopian dust cloud with these debris fields bigger than I've ever seen, and it's cars with X's on them. Every now and then off in the distance you'll see someone trying to put back the remnants of their home, but there's not a lot of people out there anymore. What happened there, it was like hell on earth, because you've got a creek that comes in from one way, and it was the creek that did so much damage to Fairview when the waters rose. But then you had another creek that came in from another way. They converged together and created this torrent of death. I mean, that area did not stand a chance. That family did not stand a chance. And it's horrific. Like Dan would be like, you know, do you want to go this way? Because we'd be running supplies, and he'd be like, well, this way is faster. And I'd say, please don't take me through that. I just can't. Like, I've seen a lot, but that area just it makes me sick. It makes me nauseous, because the devastation there it's unfathomable. It looks like Mars, if Mars had debris fields that were 50 feet high.
It's like a nuclear bomb went off.
It's unbelievable.
They just ran a bulldozer through the road to clear one lane, and just piles up on the side of debris on the side of the road that were 20 feet high. So you're driving down one lane of road where they bulldozed a path, and it's just 20 feet high on both sides of you. Everything from cars to tractors to bicycles to go-karts to four-wheelers in all different, you know. There's a transmission, you know, that came out of a car somewhere. I mean, there's Jeeps that are crumpled up like they've gone through like a compactor. I mean, they're just in a cube, because they've just been battered by boulders and everything, and debris from all sides. And I mean, it just is 20 feet high on both sides for miles.
It's like you just can't comprehend it. And there was also apparently a lot of livestock and stuff back there. And plus everything else that happened there, it's a smell. It's just something that sticks with you.
And
it's awful.
People not from this area just don't understand how spread out it is. It's not just Asheville. It's not just one area. It's all over Western North Carolina. It's Swannanoa. Yeah. It's Barnardsville. It's Burnsville. You know, it's a dozen different places that got devastated. You know, and those places aren't close together. You know, 2 hours away. You know, there's devastation. 2 hours this way, there's devastation, and in between, things may look fine. Yeah. You know, and that's the other thing. You know, is Asheville trying to get tourists back in? So they're like, get Asheville ready. We need the tourist money. So, you know, Asheville is starting to look okay. Yeah, you know, we got water back. We're doing good.
Until you go to Biltmore Village.
But I mean, 12 miles outside of Asheville is a third world country. You know, so.
And that's literally what it feels like here. It feels like he's done missions in Nicaragua. We've done a lot with, you know, just different missions. We've worked with homeless. We've done a lot well before Helene, and I would think that we would have been better prepared to see some of the stuff that we see right now. And it is hard to process, to see people that are, you know, from my heritage that literally are just scraping to try to, it's just like they're hanging onto a cliff, and they're just like tearing their fingernails off, just trying to hang on, because there are no freaking resources. Like we've got a woman in a hotel right now, and her first name is Ruth. That's all I'll say. And she was contacted. Someone contacted us about her on Wednesday or Thursday of last week, when they're calling for all this snow and this Arctic blast that we're having. And next week the temperature's going to be even worse. Ruth she was living in an RV before the storm, so she was somebody who did not have a lot of resources to begin with. Her RV gone. It got swept down in the water, completely gone. So Ruth, who is older, is living in a car, in an old Honda car, living in it. So she's driving around, bald tires, just everything else. She's driving around just trying to make it. She's going to supply stations. She's going to shower at the shower stations, which have now been pulled out of the area. She's trying to take care of herself. She's not trying to ask for help. She's just trying to survive. So we were contacted by another woman who has been working with her saying, is there any way you can put her in a hotel? Her car does not have heat. Her tires are bald. So we put her in a hotel room, and I've been talking to her, and I've been trying to bring, resources to the table. We've got a team member that works for Buncombe County that knows a lot of the options for like food stamp benefits, housing options, things like that. So we're trying to connect her. Every resource that might be able to bring something to the table, especially government-wise, is a massive wait list. Massive. If Ruth was not in this hotel right now, Ruth would be out on the streets in a car with no heat and no resources. So we got her into the hotel, and she was so thankful, and she's just such a precious woman. And I said, Ruth, how are you doing on food? And she said, they brought me some cereal from the Continental Breakfast Bar or whatever. And I said, well, when was the last time that you had something to eat? And she said Thursday. This was yesterday when I talked to her about food. It didn't dawn on me to ask her about food. Usually whenever we help people, we'll take grocery cards and we'll do everything else, but I only helped her on the phone. And so I didn't think about that. And I'm like, you've not had anything to eat since Thursday besides cereal? And she said, I don't want to ask for anything else. And I said, okay. I was like, I'm going to get pizza delivered right now. Tell me what you want, and then we're going to go from there. So we're working with Ruth, and we're trying to find her a camper. We're trying to find resources for her. She is one of thousands and thousands, and if we hadn't paid to extend, she'd be back out on the street right now. And we're supposed to have like 0-degree weather coming next week. How is this okay for American citizens? Like, what the amount of taxes that we pay alone, even if there is absolutely no humanity given from the government behind this cause, the fact that we pay the amount of taxes that we pay and not a damn bit of resources are coming into this area to help people that are starving and freezing and living in these. If you have a house and it survived, it's very likely moldy and cold, and your water heater probably doesn't work because all that stuff got wet.
Your heat pump doesn't
work. You are describing everything we've seen.
It is shocking. How is this okay? We are Americans that paid basically to live here. That's what taxes are. It's like, hey, pay to be in this country and then we'll take care of you. They're not being taken care of. And if it wasn't for people who are relentlessly big-hearted and step up, because there are so many teams, especially out in Burnsville, Black Mountain, and Swannanoa, there are so many teams, the search and rescue teams, the guys that are building the tiny sheds, the people. This is not their home. They're here because they see a need and they want to help. And if it were not for those type of people, if it were not for volunteers stepping up, what would the death toll be? Because I really don't believe I'm being dramatic to say that human beings trying to live out in 17-degree weather are in danger of dying without other people stepping up to help them. Where would those people be? And how is our government just standing around like, oh, well, that's all right, just let them freeze to death?
We were in Guerin Creek, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but this is pretty close. We were in Guerin Creek when the numbers came out that the United States would be sending, the federal government would be sending money to North Carolina. And I was in Guerin Creek when it happened, around some people who live down there, and said that the United States is now sending $1.5 million into the mountains, and literally in the same breath, we're sending $150 million overseas, in this latest package of money. And the look on people's faces when they hear that, when they've lost everything and they're standing in the middle of debris fields trying to figure out how they're going to live that day, and then they hear that all this, $1.5 million came here and $150 million went over there. They're just like,
yeah.
We could spend $1.5 million on 2 to 3 bridges. We have an excavation crew, so they've taken on some bridges and stuff. Those culverts and all that stuff that is required to build those bridges back, which there are so many people that can't access their property because there's no bridges to get there.
If there was a river between the road and their house, and that they had a bridge coming in. So you saw in Garen Creek, the water took out all of the driveways to get to their house, so they can no longer get to their house. So yeah, maybe their house is okay, but now there's no way to get to it.
And then there's
no access.
Yeah, and they're elderly people trying to make their way up and down. I mean, we have team members that run supplies to elderly people that have still not been out.
What do you accredit the lack of government resources to? Is it FEMA's underfunded? Is it ineptitude by the state government?
Yes.
Yeah, all the above, and it is really, you know, I'll tread lightly here, but it is really some of it seems purposefully inept.
I mean, it doesn't. It's not even purposely inept. I mean, there was literally they got their hands on the forms from FEMA where they told their people that were out in the field to not go to homes that had Trump signs in front of them.
Oh yeah, that was a thing. She got fired.
And I thought it was fake. I thought it was fake and passed over, but then it came back up and it got fact checked.
She shared
the
from this area.
What are you? I'm unfamiliar with.
Okay,
this.
so there's a female that she had sent out a text saying, so they have protocol.
She was the director of FEMA in this area.
Yeah, and so they have certain protocol that they have to follow. So she would send texts to her team that were going in, you know, to do the work that FEMA was supposed to do here. And, you know, it would be like, wear comfortable shoes, make sure you're blah, blah, blah. And she would say, well, how did she phrase it? About the houses that have the Trump signs.
She said, do not approach houses with Trump signs.
And I can probably find that information for you. So those texts were actually sent out, like, from her other team members, like, what are you talking about? Don't go help the people that have the Trump signs. Like, none of this is political. Mm-hmm. It has none, at that part, if you have survivors of a natural disaster like this, it is not political at all. I don't care who you are or what you believe, you're a human being, and you are worthy of having help. And so that's how we started out, was this woman who was supposed to be here to help saying, don't go to the ones with Trump signs or whatever, you know, and it's just been stuff like that people have been fighting against, in addition to just the utter lack of resources, which to me do seem purposeful, and I don't fully understand why. Because you see what's happening now in California, and please do not get me wrong, my heart breaks for California. You know, if we weren't in the middle of this disaster, we would step up to go help with that. You know, those are human beings who need help, period. I just think that the difference in what we're seeing with what the government is doing now for California, you know, oh, we're going to completely build you back, 100% coverage, Airbnb, you're required to house people, you know.
Where was that?
We're 4 months in. We're 4 months in the middle of winter, and our elderly people are freezing to death. You know, our children, yes, the children are, my God, like, trying to live in hotels or trying to live in campers and trying to still go to school and have a normal childhood or whatever. But there are a few more resources, it seems like, for children and families. These elderly people and these veterans are forgotten, absolutely forgotten. You know, we've done so much work, even for just, there was a man who got really hurt in the storm up in Bat Cave, and he broke his leg or hip.
Had to be airlifted out, broke his hip and his arm, I believe.
And he's an elderly man, and they wouldn't let him come home from hospice until he had a wheelchair ramp built at his house. Which should be something that the government helps with. Yeah. And they did not. We did that. Our team did that so we could bring this man home to his family. You know, there's old people living in tents on the ground. We had a 73-year-old man in a tent on the ground, and he asked for a cot because it was hurting his back. How is that okay?
And people say, you know, well, I understand everybody wants to this tragedy to be over. Everybody wants everybody to be okay again, because, you know, it's hard to look at, you know, it's hard to see. but even people who are getting RVs donated, you know, these people are donating RVs to get people out of tents. Most of the RVs are not winterized. Mm-hmm. You know, they're RVs from people that used them in Florida, or used them in warm climates. So we bring these people in, they've lost their homes, they got put into a tent. Okay, we're going to upgrade you now. You're out of the tent, you're in this RV. But then the cold weather comes and the roof starts leaking and all the water freezes up, and then you can't get it warm. So, you know, these people that are saying, oh, well, they have RVs now, they're okay. No, they're not. I mean, even the people in most of the RVs are not okay. They're not set up for 0-degree weather.
And if you don't know how to use them, I've traveled in an RV one time. You plop an RV for me outside. I don't have a clue on how to set that up. I don't know how to try to winterize it myself. I'm a pretty resourceful person, but you've got these single mothers. We've got a single mother right now, and it's freezing there, and she's begging for somebody to come winterize her camper. And I talked to him this morning. I said, put her in a hotel room until we can get somebody out there to make this better, because there are RVs being donated, but very often they're also pretty awful RVs. They're moldy, they're wet. They're the one that another woman, Wendy, that we have in a hotel, she had it donated, but she said, Courtney, it is so filthy, we're having to pay to have it cleaned, and it didn't come with mattresses, so they couldn't even use it originally. So we are not stabilized
Band-Aids on bullet
remotely
holes
in this area.
Just putting Band-Aids on bullet holes. So, like I said, we started in Guerin Creek. When we hit that first roadblock and got turned around, I went out and talked to some locals and figured out a back way to get in. So we came in the back way and came all the way in until the road literally was no more. I mean, the road got taken out. So right close to where the road was taken out, we met up with some people who had a house there. They were just out, and luckily I didn't have the anti-Trump sign thing that the FEMA people talk, because they had Trump signs. But we started talking, and they were using four-wheelers to take supplies up into the mountain to people because their road was gone. So they didn't have access to distribution points or anything. They were just kind of winging it, which is kind of what everybody was doing. So we had a truck full of supplies. So I said, hey, can we just leave these supplies with you, and you can take them up into the mountain? I said, that'd be perfect, because we know Miss Peggy or whoever needs stuff. So we started making multiple trips out there daily and just finding out what they needed. They needed diesel for their machines to be working. They needed some blankets. They needed sleeping bags. So we would just make trips out there so they could disperse stuff up into the mountain.
Bottled water was huge at that point. Yeah.
So at that point, Duke, the local energy company, was estimating the power wouldn't be back until Christmas. So this was early October. So we're talking about 2 months with no power. And most of the mountain homes had private wells, so no power in the homes mean they have no water. So being a little bit of a prepper and having vacation rentals and stuff, I knew that you could get a generator and wire it into a panel to bring the panel back up, which would also bring the wells back up, which would take people from being with no power, no water, to having both. So at this time, we got hooked up with some donors out of Maryland through a friend of a friend of a friend. Didn't even know them, but they were collecting money and trying to help and didn't know what to do. So we paired up with them, and I said, let's start buying generators. I'll get my electrician friend. We'll go in and we'll start wiring up houses and bringing people's power back up. So that's kind of where we started. Went in the community once the road was fixed. We take 4 generators in and started going door to door and saying, hey, would you like to have power and water tonight? And they're like,
no thank you.
Yes. One, I don't believe you, but 2, yes, I really would like that.
And they did it. I'm going to tell Miss Peggy's story super quick. So they did it one night. It was like getting dark and stuff, and they came upon this house that kind of was covered in trees and stuff, but there's a woman and her husband there. And
No, the son found us.
Oh, the son. Is he the one?
So we had 4 generators scheduled to go in one day, and this guy comes up and says, hey, what are you guys doing? And we explained it to him. I said, well, hey, my parents live up at the top of the mountain, and they haven't gotten really anything, and they could use some help. Do you think you could go up to check on them? And I said, well, we got a full schedule today, but I'll do our best, to try to get to them. And that guy stayed with us all day. We would not leave our side. He's helping us. He's handing us wrenches. He became our helper. And we get done, and it's getting dusk. And I look at my partner, my electrician, and we look at him, and he's like, you still going to go check on my parents? And I was like, yeah, we're going to check on your parents. So then we went up to Miss Peggy.
Did some gopher work for the generator.
So they had, Miss Peggy is in her 70s, and her husband's older than that, and they had trees come through their house, and a landslide. Had the landslide happened on a different side, it would have taken them out with their house. But the tree came through their roof, and they went to the basement, and they were without help, without water, power, or help for 5 days. Which is when we found them. No, the 5th day is when the Mennonite crew that was doing chainsaw work found them, and they began to cut some of those trees. So on the 6th day is when Dan found them, and Kevin, who was our electrician. So they went in to help them and went to wire up the generator and stuff, and found out that their well the line to the well had been
The
cut.
Mennonites that had come up and cut the brush had cut their well line also.
And so Miss Peggy was just so excited about
The prospect of
power.
having water.
So she was like, so Dan was like, when they saw that, and Peggy was like, am I going to have water tonight? And they're just like, we're going to rig it up.
Mm-hmm.
So they did. They rigged it up. And so long story short, Miss Peggy has become kind of like our mascot. She's in her 70s. She's got long white hair or gray hair. And she stands like 4'8", and she wears these little dinosaur rain boots. And she's amazing. My daughter actually took this really powerful photo of her. But we've been able to, we paid to have her roof fixed. We reshingled it. We did the whole thing. We've helped them a lot, but she's become kind of like my grandmother. But whenever we get tired and whenever we just feel like really overwhelmed, because it's really easy to be that way, we always say, do it for Miss Peggy. Like the whole team, that's the thing, do it for Miss Peggy. That's our punchline, is do it for Miss Peggy, because she's just like our mascot, and she keeps us going.
This is a 3-story home on top of a mountain, and this man got up on top of that roof after that tree came down, because the master
like
bedroom
80
was on the
years
top,
old, yeah.
and it opened up the roof. So he got up on that roof to try to tarp and cut branches off that tree to where he could keep the water from coming in his house with nobody able to get to them. It was just him and his wife, and he climbed up on that roof.
And he's almost 80 years
and
old.
Yeah.
They're
So
they're
that's what mountain
remarkable.
people do.
Yeah, they're
I was
gritty.
like, why did you do that? He's like, who else was going to do it?
And there's so many things about just the Peggy story alone that are remarkable, because it's like you described this 70-year-old woman wearing dinosaur boots, and it's like,
I have a picture. I can send you
please send
pictures.
us to it. We'll put it in. It'll be right here.
Yeah.
Miss
Yeah.
Peggy's awesome.
She's amazing.
But you have this person right here who is the type of person that any community, any society would value.
Mm-hmm.
They go, this is a wonderful woman, but that's who's being completely neglected.
100%.
And like, you found love and joy in that. But where is the help that should have been for that?
Yeah.
Like, we spoke to Terry Rainey, the county commissioner of Haywood County. He informed us that I think something like 65 to 70% of that community is 65 plus. That's like if you let a tornado hit a nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfathomable when you break down the specifics of the destruction.
Yeah.
And a lot of the nursing homes here were forgotten for a minute without volunteers just going in there and helping them. I mean, you had no power, you had no running water, so you've got elderly residents who are going to the bathroom wherever they can, and who are laying in feces, and they were forgotten. Their nurses couldn't get to them, or their nurses didn't survive, or whatever. I mean, there are so many complexities to the issues here. It is mind-blowing. I mean, just the things you just do not think about until somebody like tells you, and you're like, I never fathomed that. I never even thought about that part of this.
We helped a man who he lived in a trailer with his mom and his dog, and he woke up in the morning and the water was coming up his steps. So he came back 15 minutes later and it was almost to the bottom of his trailer. So he went out and took an extension cord, went across the water and tied the extension cord to a tree, and then came back and got his mom and put his mom on his back and started pulling himself across the river just as the trailer let loose with his dog in it. And that trailer starts floating down the river and hits a tree and it breaks in half. And he's watching this while holding an extension cord with his mom on his back. His home and his everything hit a tree, break in half, and his dog jump out into the water and get taken away. So he continues up the bank, saves his mom's life and his own life. The next day when the water comes down, his dog comes back.
Oh,
Shep.
thank
So
God.
yes, we got pictures. We took him a tiny house, took his dog a dog house, and set him up or whatever. Just, his name was Chris. We had to keep taking him stuff because he would give his stuff away. We had to give him a heater, and he would take the heater and give it to somebody else, but that needed it more than
This
him.
is Shep. So he's also one of our mascots. Yeah, and then this is the tiny house that we delivered to him, and Shep got his own dog house over here that matched his tiny house. But that's Shep. So
this
he
man's
survived.
trailer floated away, took out his big garage that he worked on cars with as it was going down, got destroyed. FEMA shows up a few days later, A few days later, I mean, what's this? If this man didn't have help, if he didn't have neighbors, if he didn't have people, what would he do for the few days while he's waiting on FEMA to come, assess his damage? And he said, I don't know what they're going to assess because there's nothing there.
And that's another thing they're running into.
This used to be.
This dirt.
This used to be.
This dirt right here
FEMA
used to have a trailer
require a
on it.
home visit, and people are like, I don't have a home here anymore.
So
you just want to come look at the dirt?
They come out a few days later to assess his damage or whatever, and there's nothing to assess. The trailer's gone, and the first thing they ask him is for the title to his trailer. How? It's a 70s trailer to begin with. There's probably no title anyway. But if there was, it's probably in a good, safe place in that trailer, which is now at the bottom of the river, a couple miles down. So, okay, well, we got to get that title before we can, get you your $750. What? In what world does that make any kind of sense?
And FEMA has one job.
Yeah.
Disasters is the one
That's what
thing
they do.
do.
They said they were ill-equipped for this area. Okay, I get it, you're ill-equipped. We are now 4 months in. That has given you some time to get a little more equipped. We knew nothing about disaster relief. And all of a sudden, we're out doing all the things that we're not really qualified to do, but we're figuring it out. We'll YouTube the hell out of something to figure it out. He's not an electrician, but all of a sudden he's wiring up, generators. And, I'm not a social worker, but here I am just like, we say it's like, just the matching game. Just what can we do? What resource can we give to this person that this person might have? And it's just a constant, just trying to match things and trying to help people. We're ill-equipped also, but it doesn't mean we just sit down and be like, oh, well, we're ill-equipped, we can't do anything. You do what you can do.
There's people from surrounding areas that have big machines, excavators and skid steers and stuff that have been down here every day.
Yeah.
And these guys, with these machines, they make $1,000 a day. And they're down here every day volunteering, trying to get one bridge done. I mean, if it was not for the hell or high waters, it's not for those guys. It's not for the, the other nonprofits that have popped up. Western North Carolina would look very different.
Most of the nonprofits, the people involved with nonprofits that I've spoken to, have created their nonprofit since Helene.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing to see. This is my first time in Western North Carolina, and the community aspect of it is something that I think it's a lesson the rest of the country can learn, because a unique wrinkle to this whole saga is the fact that the Asheville area was considered a climate change haven. It was considered a place where stuff like this wouldn't happen. And then I believe in 2020, Hurricane Fred happened, and that kind of made people aware of the fact that
There's nothing like this.
And then the mother of all storms comes with Helene, and the idea that it was a climate change haven is out the window. And FEMA can throw their hands up and say, we were ill-equipped. We thought this would never happen here.
Yep. But it did happen here, and we're 4 months in now. So
It's still happening.
So the fact that it happened, we're done with that. Where are the resources now? Even if the government just simply came in, and to me, it's the absolute smallest thing that they could do. But people need, at the very least, to have housing. So whether that is the government saying, okay, these hotels that are here, we are paying through spring. Because you know what it feels like to be a person who is holding your breath, thinking, I have to leave tomorrow, and then
Where am I gonna go?
freaking FEMA will make the announcement, oh, we extended 2 more days at the very last minute. So you've got people who have not had a chance to even breathe or catch their breath in 4 months since this happened. They're still stuck in fight or flight. They're still in survival mode, and you're giving them zero peace or calmness to even have a moment, because it's like, okay, you have 2 days, you have to check out here. Great, what's the option? Where's the housing? Where's the funding? Where's anything at all? There's nothing, and people are stressed out to the max. It is unbelievable.
We were at Miss Peggy's house on top of this mountain with these precious elderly people, and they're trying to navigate the FEMA stuff or whatever, and trying to jump through all the hoops that FEMA's requiring. And, it's just real simple. Just get right online, and then, and fill out these things or whatever. There's no internet. There's no power.
And they really love being online.
Right.
And yeah, and what do 70-year-old people love more than anything else? Going on a website trying to figure out how to fill out an application.
I'm 29 and I don't like
No,
If they have power, but there's no power, there's no water.
So then they switched it to where you have to go and talk to FEMA in person and take all the paperwork that you have, which is not much because it's been washed down
There's
the river.
trees every 10 feet across the roads.
You can't get out, and they don't have vehicles.
Cars have gone in the river.
And they're 80-year-old.
But they're FEMA. They should know this, right?
Well, they don't know the mountains. Apparently the mountains just were too much.
Mountains don't have disasters?
Yeah, the mountains were too much for them, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the disaster. I mean, because if you've got Katrina, you've got things that are horrific, and again, it's all humanity. Nothing needs to be comparable like to one another in that aspect. But when you're talking about what happened here, we not only got flooding and all of these trees down. I mean, the amount of trees that we've lost in an area that was like a nature refuge is mind-boggling. But our mountains moved. Like, we literally, roads are not, like, nothing is as it was. Like, if you look on Google Earth before and you look now, nothing is as it was.
I have noticed that on the GPS.
Oh, yeah.
Things are a little askew in some
Yeah.
When I went into Guerin Creek to do our first generator job, I got the address off of a whiteboard. Somebody put up that they wanted a generator hooked up. So I took a picture of it with my phone, put it into my GPS, and started down into this holler. And then I got down to this place, and he's like, this house is there. I was like, is this Reed Road? And he's like, not anymore. I said, what does that mean?
River ate
He's
the
like,
whole road
well,
up.
it used to be Reed Road, but now Reed Road is over there.
And
I
they
was
dug it. Like,
and he's
locals dug the road. There was no road at all.
I was like, well, what? He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to hook up some generators for people. He's like, to their houses? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you want to start here? And I said, I guess I do. So
You must feel like Santa Claus.
Oh,
driving
it was-
through these
it was-
neighborhoods with generators.
well, it was so awesome because just like Santa Claus, nobody believed. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever,
Yeah,
but
you're gonna have
go
to.
ahead, you know. But yeah, and then we get their power up, and they've got hot water, and and then their neighbor's like, hey, what's going on over there? And he says, these guys just got my water on. So we became very popular very fast down there. But yeah, the roads just went in different. Everything moved around.
So I have two more questions for you guys. One is, these types of hurricanes, these types of storms are now hitting places that they didn't particularly hit in the past. It's not just Florida now, What are some things people throughout the country can learn from your experience? What have you learned that might help save people's lives in other places?
The people in Guerin Creek, a couple different people in Guerin Creek that we talked to said that they talked to their insurance agents about flood insurance and were told that they didn't need it. If you don't have flood insurance, which nobody in the mountains, why would you have flood insurance when you're at the top of the mountain? What people don't realize, flood insurance is also earth movement insurance. So if you have flood insurance, the people who are on the side of the mountain who the landslide took out their houses would be covered. Nobody had that. So especially in areas like ours where this isn't typical, flood insurance is relatively affordable because you don't really need it that much. That may change after Helene.
Yeah.
Probably not
Yeah.
anymore. But flood insurance is something that everyone should look into because real life numbers, a real life situation in Guerin Creek. These people, this young couple saved money for 5 years to save up a down payment to buy some family land. They saved up $50,000 to put a down payment on a few acres of family land, and then they got a mortgage for a double-wide manufactured home for $200,000. They've got $250,000 in a new double-wide manufactured home and a piece of property in Guerin Creek. Helene comes in, takes out their entire place, takes all their cars, they have nothing, just wipes out
the earth came down on top
just
of
takes everything. Everything's gone. So FEMA comes in and says, okay, the maximum limits for FEMA are around, this is very close, it's not exact, but close, around $40,000 for your structure and around $40,000 for your personal belongings. That's cars, furniture,
That tracks with the numbers I've
everything. So around $80,000. So you've got a $200,000 mortgage and you've got $80,000, and that's all you have. And you have no house because the house is gone. So do you take that $80,000 and pay it towards a mortgage because the mortgage company is not going to forget about that loan, or do you not do that and declare bankruptcy? Because right after that, FEMA comes in and says, hey, with everything that happened here, we're gonna rezone the floodplain. And now this property is inside that floodplain, so you can't rebuild here.
That's what is happening in
So
Fairview.
they've got-
It's been rezoned and you
They've
cannot
got
rebuild there.
$250,000 in a piece of property. They get $80,000 from FEMA, and they have to start their lives over. And they have to pay back a $200,000 mortgage on a house that they no longer have.
And that is the couple that we were telling you about, that FEMA would not come look at their trailer and do anything at all until it was dug out. So our excavation team spent a couple of weeks there donating their time and massive amounts of labor, gasoline. Like, these were huge machines. Like, I've got pictures if you want them. They spent this time digging it out. So if that were a job that they actually were being paid for, that probably would have been around $50,000 just for the excavation that we did before FEMA would even come in to look at the house, to declare it unlivable, to give them this money.
And that is a best case scenario.
That's best
Nobody
case.
gets everything from FEMA.
Nope.
So nobody's getting that $80,000. It's more likely that house that she's talking about, that got 17. So, you have to declare bankruptcy, you can't rebuild on your land, and you've got $17,000 to replace everything in your life.
Flood insurance.
Flood insurance.
Flood insurance.
And so then, to also answer that question, people definitely need to have a water plan. That was a huge thing here. In my opinion, that's still a huge thing here. I do not believe the water in Asheville is safe to be drinking right now at all. But the water issue, you need to have backups on that. Either you need to have storage or you need to have some sort of filtration system if your water is tainted. But I mean, we just lost water here. We're a wedding venue and we have lodging here, so we've just had people in and out staying that have been displaced. We have tree guys staying here now, but because we're on a well and we didn't incur any damage, we just had people. We had a sign-up sheet. People coming in to shower. People coming in to get fresh water, people coming in. We tax the hell out of our wells, just trying to keep people with safe water. So you do need to have a water plan. You need to have backup. You need to have, something there. And then generators. My best friend, I had talked to her a little bit beforehand about, you guys need to kind of start, looking at some stuff, well before Helene. And she just kind of like brushed me off, and I'd give her a hard time about it or whatever. Then Helene hit, and they had to come over here for every resource. So they actually had a generator wired up last week for their house. I do think that is really important to have a generator that is actually wired into your house. It is it's expensive. Yes, you have to pay an electrician, but it is worth its weight in gold, because if you have a generator and you're trying to run, you can only run a few things if it's not directly wired into the house. If you lost power for a long time and it's wired in, then you can run your well pumps, kind of like we were doing up in Fairview. So I definitely think that you need to have a generator. You need to have a water plan.
Something else to think about with that is with the water, donations started flooding in right away, and the number one was bottled water. Mm-hmm. We had more bottled water than
I was so tired of looking at bottled water.
Yeah, so tired of bottled water. But what people don't realize is the bottled water is great, but everybody's toilet takes a few gallons of water to flush. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to use the bottled water for flushing toilets. So literally, one of the biggest commodities in this area was 5-gallon buckets from Home Depot and Lowe's, and people going down to the streams and stuff, filling these buckets up with water. It's just the most surreal thing to see a businessman walk out of his office in a suit with a bucket to get water to take back in so he can flush the toilet in his office. I mean, and that's what everyone was doing because there's no water anywhere.
Well, I think I asked you specifically, like, what could people learn in other places, but throughout these conversations I've been having in North Carolina, there's so much that, like, even I didn't know you could flush a toilet with outside water. I never thought of it in my life.
So many people don't,
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't. Again, we're a little bit preppery. I don't know.
I'm a city slicker. I don't know anything.
Yeah, but I do think having some knowledge about that kind of thing is also just really helpful. There are shows now on TV that kind of show you how to do stuff like that. But also cash became a huge commodity because if we were running resources, we, we're starving, and I'm gluten free. I can't just eat a piece of bread, where I make myself sick. So we would find like this little place that would be open, like they'd be grilling outside, whatever they had left in the, half the time it wasn't legal, but whatever, so we would go eat there, but they didn't have any way to do credit cards or whatever, so cash became king.
Yeah, and that,
for sure.
That day 2 or whatever, when we came out and all the zombies were, trying to walking out with their phones, nothing was open. There was one food truck opened up. So of course everybody goes over there and gets in line, and we're like, well, let's get something to eat. We're here anyway. We're just kind of checking things out. So we jump in line, and about 5 minutes later, the door opened, the window to the machine or the food truck opened, and he's like, everything is going to be about 30 minutes. And he said, just a reminder, it's only cash. There's no credit cards. Half the people in line just got out.
Yeah.
So I do think with our world becoming more volatile, with everything that is happening, in every way, I do think that people really need to take a good look at, what does this look like for us? Because this was not something that we ever expected to see in this area, and we were pretty prepared in a lot of ways, and then pretty ill prepared in some ways also. So I don't think it's something that people can just stick their head in the sand about anymore, because if you had told me last year that we were going to be, that our mountains literally were going to move, that they were going to that we were going to see the type of flooding and everything else, that can't happen here. That's not possible. Like, that's just not possible. And it happened, and it was a real eye-opener. So I do feel like that it needs to go onto the front of some people's picture, most people's picture, to figure out how do you take care of your family in the event of a huge disaster that you might not see coming.
And tying into that cash thing also, the communication thing was something even as a prepper, I was not prepared for.
Oh, no.
Because the ham radios.
We couldn't find my mother. My mother's 80, and
Yeah.
Somebody told us that she had been evacuated, and we couldn't get to her. And I was freaking out. It turns out my mother was not evacuated. She never lost power. She was taking a nap when we finally found her, because her car
80
was
years old.
Her car was there, and I was just like, okay, her car's here. Like, if she's been evacuated, like, wait, her house is locked. I'm like, if they evacuated her in the middle of the night, she wouldn't have made time to lock her house. So I'm beating on her bedroom window, and I'm like, Mother, are you here? And she just comes like stretching, and she's like,
no idea.
whoa.
Yeah.
She was mad because she couldn't get on Facebook, because like communications were so interrupted, she couldn't get on Facebook. And I'm like, well, Mom, I'm glad this is your only problem, because I've been freaking out for 48 hours. But communication is a big one. I don't know what the answer to that is, though, because it's not like the normal public is just going to walk around with like ham radios in there.
I thought about getting a ham radio. We interviewed a man, Tommy Miller. He showed us his ham radios, but he's a military guy.
Yeah.
So he's equipped for that.
Yeah.
In closing, my final question for you is, how can people support the work you're doing? What else would you like people to know?
Donations. I'm the type of person that I will flounder around and never ask for help for myself, no matter what the situation is. I have found that in this, with the nonprofit, that I will beg and plead for resources for other people. The biggest need right now, other than housing, we need all the RVs, we need all the tiny houses, we need all of the housing options that we can possibly get.
We need land.
We need land to put them on. We need, I know they've changed a little bit of the zoning in this area where we have a little bit of time, to put people on certain parts, certain pieces of land, but it's not ideal. It's not a long-term plan. Nothing here is a long-term plan right now. But the biggest need other than that is propane. And we gave out 120-pound propane tanks in 2 days. 65 little buddy heaters, just trying to keep people warm.
It's triage.
It's relentless. People are having the propane drives. They're having the free. But the problem with that is you have so many people that get there, like the one that happened last week. You have people that get there hours before. The lines are, have you seen that? I'll send that to you.
We've seen yesterday driving down the highway, we just saw an entire highway exit backed up.
So they had people that got there 3 hours ahead of time at the last propane drive, and they had to turn away about 50% of the people. They ran out of propane. We get propane requests. I mean, we get, I don't even know how many a day we get. All we do is just run propane, run heaters, run gasoline for the generators and stuff. So, you know, that's all a huge need. Funding for that is relentless. You know, we're lucky that we've partnered with several people that do big fundraisers for us. We have a fundraiser coming up this weekend. But we're also the team that, because we are a smaller team, we send money out to other teams all the time. Deborah, who I put you in contact with out in Burnsville, we bought a semi-trailer for they had a tent, and the tent fell in the mud, it gave out. So they needed a place for all of their supplies, because that's a huge hub out in Burnsville. So we bought a semi-trailer for them. We constantly are just farming out resources to other teams, because it's not just about one singular team. It's literally about, we all have to team together to try to get this place back to some sort of stability. So finances, you know, just donations, you know, whatever it does. If it's not, it doesn't matter if it's our team. It's just, if you have the ability to give, you know, even $20 is going to buy some propane, or it's going to buy some gasoline, and, you know, it's just never ending.
And one thing I would say, we've run into a lot of donors who just have a very specific vision of what they want to donate. You know, our prayer team got together, and we want to you know, donate one RV to one family. You know, and what we found is it's literally, the needs are changing from day to day of what's needed. And if we don't have a family ready to go into that trailer and a piece of land that we can put that trailer on that has the hookups for it, that doesn't help us. You know, so they're like, well, what do you need right now? Well, right now we need heaters and propane, but, you know, we get through this cold spell, those needs could shift to something else.
Yeah.
So while I understand that people want to donate a specific way, I would say, don't get too attached to the certain way that you want to help. You know, gather those funds and find an organization that you trust, that's got a good reputation, that's doing work. Donate it and trust them to put that money where it needs to go.
Because they're boots on the ground.
That's the problem overall, is people want to help how they want to help.
Exactly.
And that's FEMA.
Yeah.
They want to help the way that they want
Well, they
to
will
help.
only help the way they're going to help.
Yeah.
Whereas you have to be flexible.
You have to be flexible.
In
You
a
can't always see
situation
the
like this.
tangible results immediately of what you have going on. Propane's not glamorous. It's not, but that propane's going to keep that single mama and that 9-year-old boy that are in a camper that's not great, it's going to keep them warm. You know, so that is tangible. You know, so it's just like, be flexible with, you know, what you're giving.
Having somebody who's living in a van that won't idle for very long, so they can't keep the heat going, you know, when a winter storm comes, being able to take that person and put them in a hotel, that's not glamorous. It's throwing money away.
Yeah.
You know, hotel room is throwing money away, but it's keeping that person alive, you know,
Yeah.
for a few days
And that
until we get
person's
to the
name
other
is
side of it.
Corey, and Corey's mother reached out to us because he was living in a van, and we put him in a hotel, and he called, and I said, Corey, we're going to go ahead and extend for a couple of days while we're trying to find some other options for you. And he said, why? He said, why would you do that? And I said, because you deserve a warm place. You deserve to be warm. You deserve to have a bed. And he said, I don't understand. He said, I don't understand why people like do that. And for me, I don't understand why people don't do that. I mean, like, for real, I guess I'm kind of getting a little bit of an attitude about it, because, you know, we're so far into this cause, and it just seems like that we're not making enough of a difference. Don't go to Starbucks for like 5 times and you can pay for a hotel room for somebody for a night. You know, they've not had a shower. They've not had a bed. You know, think about taking a nap in your car. We've all like taken a nap in our car. That is uncomfortable as hell. And you're living in it, and it doesn't idle, and you don't have a mattress in it, you know? I mean, there are no comfort. There's just not comfort for people in this area, which is what they need. So I do think that, you know, if people could reevaluate their priorities a little bit, and maybe give a little bit more to however they need to give, to whoever they need to give, it would make a big difference in somebody's life, even if it's only for a couple of days. You know, having a respite for a couple of days, it is something. It's something to somebody.
And it's letting them know somebody cares.
Yeah.
You know, that somebody out there cares whether they're sleeping in that car or not. You know, and I mean, that's a tough place to be when you're in the greatest country on earth, and you're laying there freezing to death in a car, and don't want to ask for help, but you really need it.
When you're hopeless and somebody steps up and offers you just a little tiny bit of relief or hope, it can be the difference for you between life and death. Because if you look real close at the suicide rate in this area, it's climbing pretty quickly. People don't have hope. They don't have resources. They don't. People are like, oh, we'll just move. How do you move? You don't have money. You don't have money to pay your power bill. How do you move? It's just not as simple as what they try to make it seem.
Thank you very much for
Hold on, Jason. I want to ask you about the media coverage of, since it's been 100 days now. Whether it's mainstream or local, how's your opinion of the media coverage of it? Because you don't hear about these stories, these personal stories. And from what I realized from going to many different disaster zones like East Palestine, Ohio, Flint, Michigan, they're still living in hell, and yet they're completely ignored by.
We are the next Flint, Michigan. You'll ask?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you guys feel about the media coverage that Hurricane Helene has gotten, whether national, local? Was it a big splash at first and then it fizzled? What happened?
I feel like that for reasons that I don't fully understand, I feel like that it has not gotten anywhere near the attention that is required, honestly. They now make it seem like we just made a list of the top 25 places to visit. Asheville made that list, and I get it. We need tourism back. We are a service industry based city, but we're a wreck here right now, and they're trying to make it just seem like everything's great here, and people have no idea. I hear time and time and time again, even from Greenville, I had no idea what was happening there. Greenville's not that far away. We just did not get, and still are not getting. It's like the only things that you're really seeing that's getting the information out there are reels and TikToks that are being made by individuals or nonprofits that are trying to get the word out of there. So I'm not sure about why it's being suppressed here, just like I'm not sure why the death count is not being accurately shared. I don't understand it at all. It's just like all of it to me just seems so weirdly purposeful, just trying to make this whole thing disappear, people included. I don't understand it.
And I agree 100% with that. I think that it has something to do with the general poverty level of most of the people that were involved.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of wealthy people. It's a lot of single wide trailers that were wiped out. It's a lot of mountain people who are not extremely wealthy, but elderly people.
Homeless.
Yeah, and I will say that to defend them a little bit, I've taken a lot of video and a lot of pictures that I've shown to people about the areas that we've been in and the devastation, and they were like, wow. But then I take those people to those areas and they put their eyes on them, and they're just blown away. And I was like, I showed you videos and pictures of this, and they're like, no.
Because
it's like, it does not translate,
Speaking from my perspective, like, we've all seen pictures of debris, we've all seen pictures of disasters, and we've been bombarded with it from the time that the internet was created, or CNN runs, like all the 24-hour news channels. Like, you can turn on any television channel right now, it's fires.
Yeah.
It's fires, it's
Yeah.
fires, it's fires, it's fires.
Yeah.
But seeing the fires on TV and feeling the heat,
Oh yeah, it's different.
or seeing the pictures of rubble and then going up and touching, like, the wood.
Walking through a debris field and tripping over something and then realizing it was the steering wheel to a tractor that's still attached to a tractor.
Or
The
stepping
tractor's
on
completely
something
buried in
that-
the mud. The only thing that's sticking out is the steering wheel, and that's what I just tripped over. I mean, just 10, 15, 20 feet of mud that just has covered an entire area, and you just don't know what's
and
underneath
also
it.
when you smell the smells and you have to back out of the area and call the cadaver teams and stuff, it's it's a different level.
People
You
do
don't
not
understand.
Can't comprehend.
I will say that because I post a lot, I'm a writer, so I post a lot on Facebook, and Facebook has been absolutely the most valuable tool in our arsenal as far as getting information out there. But I will say, if I say the word FEMA, it doesn't go anywhere. It gets suppressed very much so.
Oh, like shadow ban, like word. keyword.
100%. If I get real spicy about something or I mention anything about lack of government funding, it won't go anywhere. It will just sit and not get any kind of interactions. And I'll ask friends like, are you seeing this? And so a lot of times when I post something, I'll be like, guys, you're gonna have to share it. And so they'll start sharing it and it'll go out like that. I don't understand it. I don't get it. You know, I have my own weird little theories or whatever as to what's going on here, but it does just seem like a forgotten land and a forgotten people that they're hoping will just kind of disappear one day. You know, so many people have left this area. So many people have had to. You know, they don't have jobs here anymore. We don't have near what we used to have here, so we have lost a lot of our residents and stuff. But you know, if they're hoping that the people of Appalachia that have been here for generations are just going to up and disappear and lay down and take this, I think they're wrong. You know, we're pretty damn gritty people. You know, we'll keep fighting, and we're going to keep fighting beside them, you know, until we can figure out some sort of way out of this. But we're a hell of a long way away from that.
Well, I'm incredibly grateful that you guys took the time to talk to me and allowed me to come here and speak with you guys, and I'm happy that we can get the word out about what you guys are doing. Signing off from Candler. Signing off from Candler, North Carolina with the Hell or High Water team. My name is Jason Peters. We are Status Coup. Thanks for watching.
Did you list the link for the donation page?
HellOrHighWaterNC.org is our website.
Do we need
Yeah,
to
we
say
probably
that?
should put that in
Yeah.
there.
Okay, I'll redo the wrap up.
Yeah, and any, if you have Venmo or anything like that.
I think it's all on the
No,
web.
we have PayPal.
It's
Yeah,
on the website,
yeah,
though.
we can't get Venmo until we get the C3 part.
So here's how it goes. So before we sign off here, how can people donate to your cause? Where can they go to find out more about you guys?
So we do have a website. It is www.hellorhighwaternc.org. So make sure to put that NC on it because we're the North Carolina-based one.
Thank you again for speaking with me. We're fortunate and grateful that you guys took the time and spoke with us, and we're happy that we could help get the word about it, what Hell or High Water is doing. HellOrHighWaterNC.org. They have a PayPal if you want to support the work that they are doing. That is where you go. My name is Jason Peters, signing off from Candler, North Carolina for Status Coup.